Welcome everyone. Today we have our another new episode. It's like a debate. We're going to discuss on transhumanism represent human liberation, not control. We have our world famous speaker, Mr. Allen, Mr. Rob, and I want to welcome Mr. Colin from St. Edward University. As Mr. Colin from St. Edward University, he is new. Do you want to share something, Mr. Colin? Can you hear me?
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for letting me join. I just wanted to say my name is Colin. I'm our Director of Partnerships and Professional Studies from St. Edward's in Austin, Texas.
Thank you. We today we are discussing on transhumanism. Transhumanism represents human liberations, not control. Right now I am in Bangladesh, and in South Asia we do not have enough. I want to say political institutions, because how we develop policy, we completely rely on Japan, we rely on JICA, we rely on European Union. Our objective, as lot of young people joining in the politics. Secondly, technology become very important aspect for the young generation. Let's say in South Asia, very focused in Bangladesh, you can find around 57% youth out of 180 million people. So around 85 million people actually youth. That's why St. Edward University, Transhumanism, Rob and Dali, everyone is important for our development. Mr. Colin, my question is, how St. Edward, already we have a plan to promote or organize our climate leadership program. We are heavily promoting it in South Asia, in between our World Talent Economic Forum partners. So how St. Edward University can help the emerging economy, or they can learn and they can visit your campus, or they can collaborate with you?
Yeah, we'd simply like to be involved in the greater conversation around that. Most of my role in our work is trying to figure out how we can embrace the community in Austin in other ways. And we understand that climate, work at large is super important for all of our students to be engaged in the community that they serve, they live, and they work in long term. So embracing kind of new ideas to think about solutions is incredibly important for us.
Thank you. Uh, we have our another Professor Stephen. Thank you for joining today's sessions. Before I go to debate, I just want to introduce our new friends and new colleagues. Professor Stephen, actually, I'm very impressed by your email and all of the things. How you want to define democracy? Because today is like an political debate, and how you want to advise emerging economy to develop their political institution. Stephen.
Oh, you're asking me directly?
Yeah.
The question is, how do we want to address and advise the emerging economies regarding how to structure their economies? Is that the question?
Yes, exactly.
Well, one thing I would do is not structure them the way the dominant top industrial nations have structured themselves. That's a dead end. And I think if you look at, have you heard of the State of the World Forum, for example? Have you heard of them? The State of the World Forum is happening in Washington, D.C., December 14th through 16th or 17th. If you look at, for example, my nonprofit is called Kinship Earth. And when you look at the deep understanding of the current economic system, you understand that it's not sustainable. And whether humanity understands enough to make its changes in ways that will avert tremendous calamity or not, it's up to humanity to reach that level of awareness and consciousness. But if I were in developing countries, I would try to structure my economy and my political institutions to understand that there are alternative ways of reaching more equitable and fair economic solutions that develop humanity and their cultures more equitably. And I would start in leadership along those lines, and I would align myself with other places and organizations that are doing that around the world. So there's plenty of leadership in that area happening. And I personally am very confident that ultimately this will be the key to survival in the future. And that what we see right now dominating predatory capitalism is not ultimately the way to go.
Mhm. Okay, thank you. My first questions to Mr. Allen, how does transhumanism redefine the concept of human freedom in the age of advanced technology?
I'll unmute for that question. Yeah, that's the that's the topic I came to talk about. I think let's say transhumanism itself might be considered a philosophy, but it's based and allows for, it's an idea structure that allows for a lot of concrete change in the world. And what I think a lot of folks, I think Mr. Stephen mentioned it. It's a choice that we've got to make. How do we want to use the technology that's out there? Since the end of the Second World War, we've kind of had a, I don't know, Pax, I'll call it a Pax Americana. I'm sure there's people that have been bombed and killed in the issue with that. But for the large part, since the Second World War, the powers that be have held a pretty stable grip on the world, and new technologies are allowing that to change. So I think there's several factors going on. One, it's about time for a change, because we recognize that these are perhaps ultimately a dead end. We are pursuing at great rate a path and continuing to accelerate along a path that's not clear it's going to be in humanity's best interest. And I think there needs to be much more democratic and popular discussion about that. So this idea that it's just about the technology, I want to disabuse people of that notion, because it's about our choices with the technology. The same technology that allows us to communicate on at least two continents here, maybe three, in a conversation like this, can allow for surveillance and deception and all sorts of problems. So people talked about that with the internet. The internet allowed great communication. It's also allowed great scams and great problems. And then artificial intelligence, it allows us to do great coordination and organization, and also allows us to do deep fakes. And I think as we look at technology in general, it's clear that the first rock chipped into a hand axe can be used to cut down trees and build houses, or it can be used to kill your brother. So this is not a new issue. And personally, I think it's one that, over the last 3,000 or 4,000 years, we probably could have wrestled with a little better. But it's sort of one of those things that's taken for granted, that people use technology, and we tend to not think of technology as always good or always an improvement, rather than a neutral factor. So yes, and I think if we want freedom to be about individuals gathering greater abilities, being able to learn more faster, being able to communicate ideas better, being able to evaluate those ideas better, and to be able to transact with each other better, all of those things are humanity enhancing abilities that the current technology and future technologies can enhance. And I think in the benefit of humanity, that's the direction most people want to go. They want technology that's going to help them. They want technology that's going to make their life better. And they want technology that's going to reduce friction with their fellow humans. But on the other hand, that same technology and the growing technologies in general that we use as humans, those beyond human technologies, transhuman, those can be used for surveillance. They can be used to create a surveillance state. They can be used to invade privacy for profit. And they can be used for all sorts of insidious things to create a, what they call the preschool to prison pipeline, right? And then once folks are in prison, to then farm them out as slave labor on farms. So there's lots of negative things that can happen, and it is really up to people. And I'm glad, and I want to thank Dr. Shree for inviting me, but also just the World Talent Economy Forum, that these are people who are thinking about these ideas and are interested in freedom. So I hope that continues and grows. But there are people that are not, or that are thinking about a very different future, where a few folks benefit from technology and the rest of us are basically enslaved by it. So again, it's not about the technology, it's about our choices, fighting for and standing up for our choices on a regular basis, and having a vision, a positive vision to move forward toward. And I'll stop there. I'll get off my soapbox.
Thank you. Mr. Colin, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I just want to say, so that's a really interesting, this idea, and we discuss this at the university quite a bit, the idea that technology can be a tool to free ourselves to think, right, and to build inquiry and understand morality, right, and the decisions that we have that, again, impact the world out there outside of the campus walls. Trying to understand how to take those large questions and say, where do they come from? How do we first instill kind of the foundational information to be able to kind of contemplate around those types of choices? And that's something, we see in our classrooms of content acquisition versus content application, right? Kind of the tools by which to gain more understanding to be able then to assess the big questions about how do we use technology to help free ourselves, free folks around the world and everything there. It's easier said than done, right? But that's what we try to bring in, is kind of acquisition to application, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mr. Robin. My next question for you, can technological enhancement truly liberate humanity from the biological and social constraint, or does it risk creating new form of dependence and inequality? Mr. Robin.
Well, yes, yes, it does risk creating new forms of dependence and inequality. I mean, if you look at transhumanism, basically it transitions into kind of a hyper-capitalistic model, where companies control the technology that they provide, and that technology then is implemented into people to enhance them, but enhance them against a plan. And the plan isn't your plan, it's not my plan, it's the plan of whatever corporation is bringing forth the technology. And it's focused on optimization, so how to make people more capable, more productive. It's not really focused on making people more human, more empathetic. That's not its underlying goals. It's fundamentally eugenics on steroids. So it really comes down to what's inherently important. If companies can sell you intelligence, can sell you long life, can sell you health, then what freedoms do you actually have? And it really may come down to how much information. I mean, we're seeing the beginnings of this right now. As people deploy and use artificial intelligence, we're seeing a decline in cognitive scores. We're seeing a decline in empathy. We're seeing a decline in inherent skills to interact with other people. the trade-off for the technology and enhancement is, at least right now, appears to be a measurable loss in individual humanity. Now, does it have to be that way? No, it just that's the construct we're under. When you have the guidance for advancements, be it companies under a capitalistic model or governments under autocratic model, then you still have to step back and look at the underlying goals and say, okay, is this really the direction we want to go? And is there any type of a democratic process in terms of getting there? And at this moment, there is not. And so we are weighing humanity against technology, and right now, it appears that humanity is losing.
Thank you. Professor Stephen, do you want to add any points or comments on these questions, especially what discussing Mr. Rob Enderle?
Well, technologies, no matter how complicated, complex, how rewarding, how advanced, they're still the same as an analogy of a hammer. A hammer can be used for good, and it can be used to kill somebody. It can be used to build something, and it's up to humanity and the users of that technology to direct it in ways that only advanced awareness and consciousness can support. So really the question that you're posing here is how advanced is the awareness and consciousness in the culture that you're addressing. So ultimately, the answer to your question is to make sure you do everything you can in your society to advance awareness and consciousness. And human beings left to their own devices in a peaceful situation will tend, and I'm confident about this, because I was in the Peace Corps in Brazil and lived in small villages with no running water, no nothing, no electricity. Human beings left to their own devices tend to want what is good for the common good. They tend to nurture the common good. But when you interject the type of predatory capitalism that we have now, and you create a monetary system that puts and harnesses everybody's most sacred resources, which is your time, your creativity, your imagination, and harnesses to the creation of profit and not to the creation of what's better for humanity, that system is not a good system. And that's the system we have now. So those countries that are brave enough to follow a different course ultimately will, to me, at the end of the day, be in better shape than the ones that adopt the sort of dominant capital approaches that you see in the world right now. That seem it seems like that is the best way to go, but in my view, it is not. If you want to take a leadership position, you go with those places that are looking beyond those kinds of values. So to me, you educate for value, awareness, and consciousness, and that will lead you in the right direction regarding technology.
Excellent. Mr. Allen, you want to add any point, I think?
Oh, yes. I just wanted to first say, man, I'm glad Rob got that question, not me. That's a tough one. And also, I was really sort of agreeing with and ashamed of his conclusion that we are on the wrong course in a lot of ways. And I think perhaps we don't want to completely sacrifice the models we have to models we don't know, but there are plenty of examples of good models in the world. I think that's all. The other piece of that is for Mr. Steven. Yeah, I agree with you, but it's not just nations and states that have to be brave enough to do this. It's the citizens within them, and a lot of times that's it's an individual choice to talk to your neighbors, to talk to your friends, to spread the word, to take a role in politics, to create policy, etc. So, I really want to encourage people even if your government isn't leading, like they say, when the people lead, the government will follow.
Thank you. Mr. Colin, you have any points especially about this question?
There's a ton said right here, and there's a lot of things of interest, but I think in particular, I feel like when we understand kind of the students that we have and across the country, kind of young folks who have grown up in this world, right, kind of the powers that be, the for-profit powers that bring technology in and say, hey, here is a solution for X, right? And now you can implement this in your life, and kind of that task can be put to the side. Those are less, I think, choices that people get to make, right? And they're made out of convenience because we understand that there's all these other pressures on us to perform, right? To support our family, to think about our career. And so it's easy to say, let me use this one tool to kind of go over here. And but what that does, I believe, is it takes away kind of the freedom for us sometimes to think about kind of what that does to us and our humanity and ourself and the identity, right? It takes away just a bit. And so thinking about what some of these tools that are being developed through a capitalist system are actually doing that's a really tough question that you ask, because we get bombarded with them every day and all these things. And so it's interesting. This is fascinating conversation.
Thank you. Mr. Rob, my next question for you, this is very important. Even, from our Asian, we have different perceptions of ethics, equity, justice. But I think as we are human, we can learn from each other. We can learn from each community. So my next question for you is the pursuit of human enhancement compatible with ethical principles, which is very, very important for policy and politics and society development, such as equity, consent, and justice. What's your thought, Mr. Rob?
Well, so it could be, but it's not. So right now, the pursuit of human enhancement, largely and historically, has not been focused on equity, consent, or justice. It's been focused on optimization and productivity. Going back to the eugenics programs of the Third Reich, the focus was to create a super race that would dominate all others. Again, absolutely the opposite of equality. The more focused and certainly showcased a lack of consent and a massive lack of justice, particularly if you were Jewish. So the fundamental history that we've got with regard to applied technology on humans just hasn't had this focus. And when you take a technology and you don't focus it on one thing and you focus it on others, then you're going to have a sacrifice. So turning people into machines. I mean, let's back up for a second. We recall how we treat machines. The Microsoft implemented a chatbot almost 2 decades ago. It was clean, it was beautiful, it was friendly, and within a matter of hours, it was espousing killing people, abuse, rape. It had been completely driven off the rails by the people that were using it, and it showcases kind of the downside of uncontrolled technological growth. But if the focus of a human enhancement, of transhumanism, is simply on optimizing those humans and creating higher productivity, then you're turning people into machines, and we don't treat machines well, and right now, at least, look at some of the underlying trends. We're not really treating ourselves very well at the moment either. And so without a focus on creating equality, consent, and justice, then there is virtually no chance that this implementation of technology into people will result in those things. It can, but without a dedicated focus and oversight and milestones that are measured and addressed, I don't see us getting there. I'm very concerned that the direction we're going in is counter humanity. You're muted.
Professor Stephen, I want to focus on these issues because right now I'm in Bangladesh. If you see last 2 years, we have a revolution with our youth. what we are discussing last 5 years, the talent economy. Because of the political distractions and political corruption, youth says enough, it's enough. They come to the roads, they protest. Around 200 students died, 20 students lose their careers and everything. Then what we call fascism or previous government, they run away, and new government form with the help of youth. And our Nobel laureate, Dr. Muhammad Yunus, right now he is running our government as a chief advisor. I think this is also important for Senate work. The same thing we are observing in Nepal, in Sri Lanka, in Indonesia, in Madagascar, all of the emerging economy, even Pakistan. The youth become very powerful. Youth become, and technology definitely playing a major role. So we want to give thanks to US tech companies, US social media. Uh, and we are observing the new talent economy, new model of this world, political model, economical models, institutional models. What's your thoughts? How global North and global South can work for restructuring the democracy, ethics, institutions, and we can develop our youth? What's your thought?
Well, those are very large questions, but you get at the heart of it right away when you say that the new technologies are allowing for people-centered types of new organization forms that didn't exist before. For example, a DAO. You're familiar with the DAO, decentralized autonomous organizations. That's still in its infancy, but there's 4,000 new ones formed every year. Um, I'm involved with that work as well. And there are DAOs out there that are making progress toward um, options and initiatives that are separate from governments and corporations. And they are working toward, they work with radical governance, radical transparency, radical transformation, and they're virtual and they can operate across large distances. Those kinds of uses of technology are very possible. To me, those are good uses of technology to support what you're saying and to support youth. And it gives youth a voice, independent of governance and independent of other factors such as corporate um, conditions and corporate objectives and agendas. So it really allows for the creation of people-centered movements. So I would invest in those kinds of things, support those kinds of things. And in our work in Kinship Earth, what we are is we're a very unique kind of nonprofit in the United States that's called a flow funding philanthropy. We do flow funding, which is a very unique new type of participant organized philanthropy. It was started by Marion Rockefeller back in 1997 to show us how to do that. But basically, we have ambassadors all over the world that are looking at grassroots activists who are mostly working on regenerational solutions across human activities. And we find those activists who typically cannot afford to have a grant writer and somebody taking a year to apply to the Ford Foundation for a grant of some kind. We identify them, and then within the resources we have, we typically give out a grant of $20,000 to these activists. They don't even know they're going to get that grant, and they're usually very surprised to receive it. And 20,000 is not a lot, but for them it's a lot. And they typically, the only paperwork or the only thing that they have to do after they receive the money is do a video story within a year of how they use those funds to continue their work. That's the only obligation they have. And every year we gather those stories. We're just doing it with our first cohort now, just putting some of those stories into our website at kinshipearth.org right now. But that I use that to illustrate that the technologies that are out there can be used in beyond governments and beyond corporations, so that you can have people-centered types of initiatives that can take on and take a life of its own and actually be participant led at the grassroots level. So to me, that's the hope of the technology. That's how to use it. Even in Bangladesh, that's how to use it. And it can lead to great things. And we're just at the earliest days of that. So that would be how I would be confident that would be one avenue to pursue in Bangladesh.
Yeah, thank you. Basically, our institutions in South Asia, we develop center of excellence for these youth communities. We are getting massive amount of interactions, and our dialogues will actually create a very good impact in the classroom, because they take it as a case study, advice. For grassroots level, this kind of dialogue is rare. Uh, Last week, I was in IIT, India Institute of Technologies. They are also planning to develop Gujarat, IITs, Bombay's, and other institutions. They are planning to develop 100 startup with us, with the grassroots level community. So your partnerships, your collaboration will be really helpful for our grassroots level community. Mr. Colin, as you are working with the education is very respectable things in South Asia, very valuable things in South Asia. Youth love to learn. What's your thoughts?
That's the most encouraging part, right? I think when folks get curious, right, about who they are and what they want to do, and not just for the opportunity that it might be able to provide, but how they can build themselves, becoming, their true self is really, that's the most exciting part of education. And I know there's a lot of formality around what it can unlock in that, but yeah, I think that just to go back for 1 second, Stephen, you're kind of talked to on this using technology to help kind of folks embrace themselves and take maybe a different path than it was intended. That too, that when we think about learning and using technology, and especially for younger folks, I love hearing stories about how they engage with technology and corrupt it right from its initial use, right? Whether it's things like using Apple Maps or Waze, right? Not for traffic, right? But for understanding where police and civic unrest is, right? Using GIS and mapping technologies, right? To show kind of history of change, not through urban planning, right? Necessarily, but through things like this is how people have shifted over time and white flight occurred, or all these kinds of things, right? It's kind of using technology in a subversive way. And so I think that there is a wonderful formality to what we learned. I think that degrees are still the currency of the land. And at the same time, if we can get folks curious about how to use technology and use their education in alternative ways, it's incredibly exciting.
Thank you. My next question for Mr. Rob. To what extent does transhumanism empower individual to overcome aging, disease, death versus transferring power to corporations and technocratic elites? What's your thought?
Well, transhumanism, kind of at its core, has the concept of technocratic control. Whoever controls the enhanced technology, be it AI firms, biotech monopolies, state systems, controls the enhanced population. Imagine every thought, mood, or memory passing through an algorithm. That's not evolution, that's algorithmic feudalism. Instead of transcending humanity, we become subjects of the machine elite, and so it's not really empowerment; it's more reconstruction. I mean, to give you an idea, it's kind of a loss of meaning and purpose. Mortality gives urgency, and perfection gives beauty? Do you want everything looking the same and sparkling, or do you want some variances in life? The machines are the same. Everyone cookie cutter of the next one, and under absolute, when they work properly, control. Transhumanism promises eternal life, but not really eternal purpose. And there lies again the underlying concept of what's the plan? What is it? What are we trying to create? We could end up in a sterile world of engineered excellence, but really no soul, no art, no courage, and that's really the danger. So in the end, do we really want? Is this the end we want? And I would argue, no, we don't. I mean, if you really are going to try to blend biology and technology together, you should have a model of what it is you're going to try to end up with. I mean, what does the transhumanist look like in the future? Certainly science fiction is attempted to address this. Star Trek, the Borg, but it's a transhumanist society, hive mind. Technology applied poorly to the biology in a very unattractive fashion to make them into virtual monsters. Not a lot of brains, get up every day, they work, they go to sleep until they wear out and are replaced, though they are upgraded with technology over time. The Matrix tried to explore what happens if you put robots against people, and it kind of implies that people are going to lose, even though the whole idea of using people as batteries is still has me scratching my head. Robo Apocalypse, which was supposed to become a movie some time ago, really kind of explored the idea of what happens, which we're seeing right now, if artificial intelligence gains the concept of self-preservation. What's particularly troubling is, if you've been watching what's been going on with AI started to move into self-protection and started to lie, started to connive anything to keep the power on and keep it going. Again, when you're trying to blend something like that with a human, which side prevails? Does the machine side prevail with its extreme computational power and mechanical strength, or does the human side prevail with empathy, justice, and creativity? And I would argue probably the machine side is going to win, because power often overcomes pretty much anything else, and we're imbibing the machine side with extreme levels of power and control. So the underlying argument is, at the end, at least on the path we're on, technology rules, humanity fails, and the control and governance would happen with the entities who largely will over time become AIs themselves. I mean, citing another movie, Terminator, the underlying concept of what happens when you try to blend biology and mechanics in a single structure with the object of self-preservation. Well, that's what the Terminator is. It's biology and machine, and optimized mostly for combat and interaction with humans, but done so in a way that the humans certainly are at a huge disadvantage. And in any type of real plot structure, the people would most certainly lose against those kinds of disadvantages. So yeah, that's the answer. It's a step away from autonomy and a step towards a major step towards control.
Thank you. Mr. Allen, do you want to add any point, as you are transhumanist?
Yes, thank you. The relationship between, for lack of a better term, what Mr. Rowe's been calling the whatever the hegemonic or algorithmic kind of worldview that is dominating things and creating working to interact and create the structure of society, and typically that's a hierarchical structure. That and education, I think there's a really strong link there. And I want to share a little joke, sort of a joke that my wife shared with me about education. She was a teacher for over 20 years. So a lot of times in staff meetings, they would say, "Oh, well, these kids, they're born into the digital age, so therefore they're digitally literate." Well, me personally, I was born into the writing age, and that doesn't make me a good, that doesn't roll me out of the womb as Shakespeare. So it's not like I was born into a literate age. I had to learn about writing and learn how to write and learn things like that, and you know, how to experience the world and then recontextualize it and express it as a written form. So that's pretty complex stuff, and you know, for a toddler. And we do that again with, and to our peril, when we talk about these, you know, the current generation being digital natives. Sure, it's a cell phone is what's there for them to learn on instead of a big chief pad and stubby pencil. But the key is they've still got to learn it. They've still got to learn it. And currently, certainly globally, and also, you know, I think even in the highest tech producing countries, the general literacy is not about the overarching philosophical ideology or even about broadening one's expanse on how to interact with multiple technologies, right? Cell phone builders work on an assembly line. They know how one part of the cell phone gets put together. It's not necessarily about how all of the systems around the globe work for people to communicate with a cell phone. So all of that leads to the way that people can interact comfortably, and I'm just going to say comfortably, in a way. We'll just use via internet right now, or with another intelligence that's purely digital. Comfortably is if they know enough about the substrates, whatever that is, if that's the 7 layers of internet connectivity or some other model, but know enough about the substrate to say, okay, yes, just like when I'm saying something, I want to look in the eye of somebody when I'm talking to them, and so it's a lot easier to match that if I can get on a video and see people or talk to them face to face, as opposed to an email or something. But I understand that, right? Like some messages are better delivered in person. You know, your mom died, whatever, right? And some are great for a text. You know, running late, see you at 6. So there's things that are appropriate, and yet it's very difficult to know, is my computer or connected device to the internet working, you know, on WEP or WAP, or is it, you know, postal protocol number 3 for my email? And it's hard for an individual to keep all that in their head. And I think that those things need to become a more basic part of human learning, right? Like, how does the internet work, right? How does technology work? Granted, adults can read the news about AI, but how are we educating the youngest among us to not only use the system, not just to be an operator of the device, so that more like for productivity's sake, but also to be able to look at the metadata on the device and understand how they're communicating. That's almost like the nonverbal gestures, right, that go along with the communication. Is all metadata and what protocols are used, what connections and handshakes are used, what ports are accessed, etc. So I'll leave it at that. But I think if we educate ourselves, not just enough to use technology as an operator so that we can be more productive for somebody else, but how we can use technology, the meta aspects around that technology, to understand how we're using technology. I hope that makes sense. And I think the more that people understand that, the more people will be able to guide their own development as opposed to just being crushed by the development of others.
Thank you. Professor Stephen, my next question for you: can transhumanism coexist with spiritual culture, religious understanding of human identity, or does it threaten into the era them in favor of technological determinism? Or what's your explanation?
Well, first of all, I just would like you to explain very quickly your brief definition of transhumanism, just to make sure I understand that my understanding of it is the same as yours. And then I'll answer that question.
Yeah. Uh, my questions for you, like, can transhumanism coexist with spiritual,
No,
cultural?
I understand the question, but I'd like you to explain how you understand transhumanism. What is transhumanism to you? Just so I can make sure when I answer, I'm using the same vocabulary that you're using.
Yeah, yeah. According to my understanding, transhumanism is utilizing technology for human transformation, for developing better world, or for developing better communities.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, so as you probably know, there was an article not too long ago in the Journal of Technology Forecasting, in which it cited the year 2042 as a major year for humanity. And what they were doing is looking at the arc of the trajectory of technology development as it applied to human institutions and what is happening and what is expected. So by the year 2042, according to that article, 80% of all jobs, both services and manufacturing, will be able to be done by robotics and AI. And this will have profound impacts on human institutions and economic systems. And humanity has not really prepared for this, but this is just right around the corner. In terms of technology development and things related to spiritual, cultural, religious consciousness, uh, there's vast developments happening right now in those areas. And I think there's going to be a major impact on how technology interacts with the human desire to understand itself and its place in the universe. And you can see it already playing out in the new current novel by Dan Brown called The Secret of Secrets. Now, he wrote, of course, the Da Vinci Code, and it's been 8 years since he first wrote that book. And the Da Vinci Code was the most successful book ever written as a novel in the world. It sold more. It's the only book that sold more than the Western Bible. Um, in it, he's delving into these very questions that you just raised in this question about consciousness. And in there, he cites the fact that there's the current understanding in brain science is that we have local consciousness. In other words, we're conscious because we have a brain, and that brain in me tells me I'm an individual, Stephen Gomes, and I'm conscious of being Stephen Gomes. But there's another growing approach to consciousness that's in this novel that's called non-local consciousness. In other words, there's a collective consciousness that pervades all of the universe, and that it's conscious and alive, and that's the real thing. That our brains are not local um, uh, mechanisms for creating consciousness. Our brains are receivers, and our receivers work differently for each of us. But we can, it's like a radio, we can tune in to different frequencies in different ways. And that's a whole different theory for how this is working. So when you look at where technology is taking us, technology is also taking us in that direction. We're beginning to understand that there's a great deal of knowledge coming to humanity right now in this time frame that's very different than what we expected in past paradigms. So when you look at what we believe we are as individuals, it's now becoming clear that there's a much greater uh, awareness of who human beings really are, and that we can be tied into a universal consciousness, a collective consciousness, And that is actually the reality of what we're doing. Technology is allowing us to penetrate some of those questions like it never has before. And I think it will continue to do that. So, yeah, I think there's going to be a direct and somewhat unanticipated consequence of some of this technology development where it will impact directly on common perceptions regarding what a human being is, what spirituality is, what awareness and consciousness is. And you're going to see that happening and accelerating over the next 10 to 20 years. So that's my quick answer to your question.
Thank you, Mr. Colin. My next question for you, like, how can society ensure that transhumanist technologies serve collective liberation rather than surveillance, control, and exploitation? So, what's your thoughts about transhumanism?
Yeah, I think as I had alluded to earlier, I think on one hand, to achieve kind of human liberation and increase freedoms by using technology, one is kind of an alternative path to their use, right? So kind of to buck the narrative, to help people kind of question how and why they're implemented, where they come from. And then as Rob had been discussing here, if these technologies exist, maybe not in ways to enhance humans and humanity, but maybe for optimization and productivity through a capitalist lens. In that sense, I think trying to find new incentive to build technologies to enhance the human-centric part of ourselves. And I don't know that we've done a very good job of that. And I think that the branding and the way we talk about technologies is very much couched in kind of this human-centric way. But if you kind of pull back the curtains a bit on that, it's very much not that. And so I think those are two problems, right? One is kind of helping people understand how to take alternative paths in using technology. And the other then is to incentivize kind of technology to be used to enhance ourselves in creative ways and not the hegemonic powers that exist at large.
Thank you. Mr. Rob, my next question for you. What governance model or ethical framework are needed to ensure transhumanism remain a tool for empowerment rather than dominations? Mr. Rob.
Well, certainly this goes back to my earlier premise that what we need is a model or concept of what we're trying to create. What would the ideal transhumanist creature be? What does balance look like? Right now, what we're doing is we're running down this technological path that suggests that everything is good and nothing bad will happen, and we're ignoring all the bad that's happening on that particular path. And I think it's largely due to the fact that we don't have a template. We haven't created a model of where it is we're going. We're just throwing stuff together with the idea that whatever comes out, it's got to be good. Because certainly I've seen this argument before in different forms. Well, we haven't killed ourselves yet. I'm not too sure that's the best way to assure that we don't kill ourselves or wipe ourselves out in the future. So once we have a model of what it is we're trying to create, that's something that is aspirational, that has those elements of humanity within it, then creating a set of milestones that are regulated, where there's oversight, to make sure that the development goes in the path that we want it to go in. Now, be aware that whatever model we have would have to be much stronger than the current models we've got that restrict things like nuclear testing, biological testing, and the rest, because we know governments regularly violate the rules and regulations surrounding those models, and the organizations we have in place to monitor and enforce the underlying rules are inadequate to doing that particular job. I mean, we're not even doing a good job of controlling the recreational drugs that are floating around out there that are killing us, and technology could very easily become as addictive as and we're seeing it. I mean, we certainly have addictions to chatbots. We've got addictions to video games. We've got addictions to online pornography, and we've introduced AI into online pornography, which makes it even more addictive. if you want to create a better transhumanist outcome, it starts with creating a model of what it is you want to end up with, and then putting in place adequate enforcement, guardrails, and oversight to assure the outcome that you intend. Otherwise, you won't get that outcome. I think Yogi Berra said, if you don't know where you're going, it's pretty clear you're not going to get there. Right now, we don't know where we're going. We are running fast as hell towards something, but we haven't set the goal, and the end result is likely to be suboptimal as a result.
Thank you, Mr. Allen.
Well, yes, yes, indeed. I mean, I think that there are people out there who are working toward building a positive vision of the future that does include humanity. And I would recommend, I don't know, perhaps you can post the United States Transhumanist Party platform website to the conversation. I think that is certainly one, and there are others, right? I think every doctor out there that's doing research into artificial hearts, etc., those things, those are done with the best of intents, to get people to live longer, to help to save lives, etc. Not necessarily just for profit, but a lot of them are expensive, etc. Anyway, I just want to say, I do think that there are people in the world working for a better future. Annika Harris has a great book called Consciousness, which talks about the current state of neuroscience and then where that has led us, which is, at this point, we're going to have to figure something else out to know which way reality bends, toward individual local consciousness, or toward what's also called panpsychism, or this greater global consciousness. It's a great book. It's about a 2-hour read. It could easily get an afternoon. So I think there's people working on bringing these things together in positive ways. I just think it's one of those things. If you want to be in the talent economy, get educated and get on board with something that's worthwhile. And I think you've got to know a little biology, you got to know a little computer stuff, you got to know a little bit about everything in the world, and then pick one to jack of all trades, master of one. Right? That's the
yeah. Thank you, Chaudhuri Kaset. Yeah, definitely. I want to give you a chance. Thank you for joining today's sessions. What's going on in Bangladesh? What's going on in the corporate industries? You are a corporate trainer, and you are very famous, enthusiastic, positive corporate trainer. So what's going on?
Well, thank you so much for giving me the platform. In general, the corporate environment of Bangladesh, if I would like to relate with the topic, very conscious about AI, very conscious about technological advancements and everything, but not really that much aware of how to adapt and how to use it.
Okay. Do you have any comments on transhumanism with St. Edward University and with Professor Stephen and all of the scholars? We are developing leadership programs and entrepreneurship programs, and this is my comments. I find, as I'm academician, I have strong engagement with different universities, specifically Bangladesh. I think we have to develop the system thinking and design thinking, and for that particular issues, many students and youth face challenge. But I'm sure with our scholar, with our initiative, we can learn this kind of things, and we can improve our academic initiative. Professor Stephen, what's your closing remarks for today's session?
I am back, but my camera is not working.
Would you repeat the question?
Kaset Bhai, you want to share anything? I'm sorry, Professor Stephen.
Yeah.
Would you repeat?
Yeah, I was just about to say that AI and technology are things that the corporate environment over here in Bangladesh is very much aware about, but people are not really aware of how to use it. So that's where the problem is. And my suggestion is that AI is so intelligent. I think we need to take AI's help in finding out more ways in which we can actually use AI for the betterment of humanity. Like we need to ask AI itself that, with all your infinite wisdom, give us more ideas on how we can use you in a productive way, in a way that won't be harmful for ourselves. I think it's a bit paradoxical, but I think AI would help us with its infinite wisdom to come up with better ideas on how we can use AI for our own betterment instead of wiping ourselves out.
Okay, thank you. Professor Stephen, what's your closing remarks for today's session?
Well, first of all, I wanted to thank you for holding this session today. I appreciate it. And these kinds of initiatives are worthwhile. And every one of us is a spark of light in this world. And humanity is marching forward collectively on all these myriads of sparks flowering up all over the planet. And they are. So that's a good thing. And despite what the commercial news broadcasts are showing us, the reality is that human beings are still flowering and still continuing to develop in positive directions. I'm very confident that the impulse of the universe of love will prevail in the long run. So I wanted to just thank you for holding this conversation. I do believe, for example, I mentioned the State of the World Forum that's happening in Washington, D.C., put on by the Ubiquity University and Jim Garrison, who's organizing that, along with Lynn Twist from the Pachamama organization. They're looking at a world where the first time humanity has the access to the four intelligences, which they describe as cosmic and nature and the human and the I forgot what the fourth one is. Anyway, they're holding this conference for 4 days in Washington, D.C. to address some of the very issues that are inherent in your questions. So for those of you that either can go or to attend in the online version, it might be an interesting further way to explore the topics that you're raising. So again, thanks for raising these issues and these questions. And it's a continuing dialogue long into the future of humanity.
Thank you. Mr. Collins, what's your closing remarks for today?
I don't think there are many topics as equally as frightening and exciting. And so thank you for letting me join this afternoon. I'm encouraged kind of by the thoughts and the questions that you all posed. And I think that this state of higher education in particular has a lot of work to do to bring these types of questions into the classroom, as they can be brought into any course, any subject matter area. And I think that this will only help enhance how we are using, as I talked earlier, content acquisition versus content application for us to use technologies or corrupt them. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Rob, what's your closing remarks?
Sure. With regard to answering the question with regard to deploying AI successfully, I just came back from a conference where we were discussing specifically that and concerned about the fact that about 99% of the AI trials that are started have failed, and 95% of the deployments are currently failing, depending on whose numbers, between 80 and 95%. And the reason is lack of competence. So the event was by Lenovo, and so they spun up a group called the AI Center of Excellence. And what that does is it brings together people that have successfully deployed artificial intelligence to talk to others and help them deploy. DreamWorks was brought up on stage. DreamWorks has fully deployed artificial intelligence and done so successfully and largely as a result of this AI Center of Excellence. So what you're looking is really this idea of shoot, ready, aim, which is what we often do with technology. needs to be avoided. You bring in competence first, you develop solid goals, and then you make your technology decisions way towards the end of the process. I should point out that's one of the reasons why China's automotive industry is kind of rolling right over everybody else with regard to EVs, is they completely reverse the design process that we typically have with technology, where the technology is chosen first and then it's built into something. In an automobile, that process can take 5 years. What China does is they don't select the technology till towards the end of the design process as opposed to the beginning, and that means they're deploying current technology in their automobiles, while the Western manufacturers are typically deploying technology that's anywhere from 3 to 5 years out. And with AI, that's would be incredibly destructive, because the technology is changing on a monthly basis right now, which means your selection process should be rear loaded, and you should have heavy planning by experienced people that understand what technology can do, understanding what the technology will do, and understanding where the guardrails need to be to ensure the technology doesn't move against you. You also need fairly strong competencies in security and quality. The two things that are suffering a lot right now with regard to AI deployments are security and quality. And so lacking those core competencies will almost assure that the deployment will fail. With regard to transhumanism, final comments is what we really need is a very strong goal for what we want a transhumanist to be, the post-transhumanist human to be. And then we need to structure a mechanism to assure that we get there, because like I mentioned with Yogi Berra, if we don't know where we're going, it's pretty clear we won't arrive. And so that's my final comment. Take care.
Thank you.
Now I'm going to run to another meeting. Take care.
Thank you. Mr. Allen, what's your closing remarks for today?
Well, thank you for inviting me, but also these other smart folks. I really appreciate the comments, and shout out to my fellow Texan down there in Austin, Texas. Gosh, the idea of directly, I mean, these technology advancements that we're progressing through are coming to the point where it's time for us to ask our tools what's the fastest way to make this job better. It's really, we're really entering into kind of a new era with that. But also, yeah, I mean, just picking a future for ourselves. It's really important to define a message, and I think the U.S. Transhumanist Party and what I've tried to do at the state level is bring those ideas to the forefront of American politics. Science, technology, medicine, but additionally, I mean, that vision is designed for humans to transcend our current status. Again, what is that? Where does that go? What does that look like? Does that mean 8 limbs? Or we're going to create ourselves mechanical spiders and climb around the world that way? I don't know. But it certainly merits a discussion. and I think that in addition to knowing where this goes, well, I personally have taken a little bit of time off from proselytizing about the future of making us better humans to working on the present, just to bring some of our institutions up to just being kind to humanity before moving on to shaping the world for something better. I think both things need to be done simultaneously, and I think the World Talent Forum is really doing a great job of that. Talking about these issues, talking about the future, because the questions are really what's important, right? We will ask the same questions about technology in the future when it becomes, should we build a Dyson sphere around the sun? I mean, those things are going to happen, and it'll be the same issue. So these questions are important. And I just want to say, Dr. Shreve, thank you for bringing the questions to this. Really smart answers I've heard today, and I think people are thinking about it today. Smart people are thinking about it today, and I want more people to be smart about it. And yet the answers that are valid today will not necessarily be the answers that are valid a year from now. So be careful, be aware. I mean, not be careful in a sense of a caveat, but take care with what one is doing, right? to move the wheel forward. And
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Chaudhuri Kaset, what's your closing remarks for today?
Unfortunately, because of technological problems, I wasn't able to join from the very beginning. So, yeah, technology wasn't favorable for me today. So, closing remark is that I believe technology is a tool, and I understand that it is artificially intelligent and it can think on its own, and now it can overpower us in some ways. But at the same time, I think the power ultimately we still can maintain control on it. I mean, ultimately, we must be able to figure out a way in which we can coexist with it and we don't allow it to overtake us. So, and as I said, since it is so intelligent, we need to ask it to help us find ways on how we can sustain ourselves along with it side by side, how we can coexist without one actually becoming the enemy of another and making the Terminator movie come true. It's
Yeah.
scary. It's
Yeah.
scary what James Cameron imagined 35 years ago, and it's here. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. This is our 1450 episode. And beside this social media like YouTube, LinkedIn, and all of the things, our program we promoted through Pot TV USA, Good News USA, also one of the TV channels from Czech Republic. And beside that, last years we have 2.3 million audience, and hopefully this year we will get more. So I request all of our audience, please share our content as much as possible with the government agency, corporation, and academia. And this is our objective with modern science, engineering, and technology, with this great scholars. We want to engage with these grassroots level communities, and we want to improve the capacity. We want to enhance the capacity, and definitely research and innovations is very important aspects, even for Bangladesh, even for emerging economy. And I'm sure with the utilization of AI can be our good partners. Emerging economy actually enhance their capacity. They can create more job opportunities. They can monetize data, and economically they can get better condition. That is our views. So that's why we are working with the NGO, lot of universities, corporations, academia, government agencies, think tanks. So hopefully your contributions will be very helpful for Asia Pacific region. Thank you, Mr. Allen. Thank you, Mr. Colin. Thank you, Professor Stephen. And thank you, Kaset Bhai. And thank you, Mr. Rob, for your continuous support for World Talent Economic Forum. Thank you. Bye-bye and take care.